Welcome to the Dynasty Dummies podcast. I'm Zach Reed. I'm joined by JMic. It is the part one of the Dynasty Dummies rookie Hootenanny running back edition. We're going through the first six of DLF's top six ranked running backs. And I'm excited to get JMic's take on some of these players. We're going to miss Matt Foreman this week. He'll be back with us again next week, so do not fear. But we're going to soldier on. We're going to do-si-do, swing your partner round and round, and get into some of these running backs.
This is such an interesting group that we're going to be able to talk about today. And I'm super grateful for the opportunity. Again, all the best to Foreman as he takes the week off. We'll give him a little break. He's been working really hard over here with the Dynasty Dummies, so we'll allow him to be able to breathe a little bit. But it's Zach and I for the two-step. And interestingly enough, we'll be starting in Texas here shortly. But again, for those who have been rocking with us since whether it be 2015, thank you. We appreciate you. It's good to see you again. And if this is your first time checking us out because you heard how much fun we had with the wide receivers, welcome to you too. We're excited to be able to get into it again, week one of the running backs. And I think that when it's all said and done, Zach, this is going to be a really interesting group of guys, particularly as we look at the ever-changing landscape in the NFL. A lot of these guys are going to be coming into roles where a lot of teams did not opt to franchise tag or re-sign so many of these veteran running backs. I think of the David Montgomerys of the world, the Miles Sanders of the world, so on and so forth down the line. And there are opportunities to be had when we're looking at RB2 for next season, terms of production and where these guys may fit in to ideally get an opportunity early. So I'm excited to be able to explore that with you as well. But before we get into it all, Zach, what have you been chewing on? What's been on your mind lately?
Buzz, commotion, clamor, fanfare, fireworks, hullabaloo, hubbub, pandemonium, babble, uproar, tumult, cacophony. I think we're at the point where there is so much noise that it becomes difficult to discern what to listen to. We're after the combine, so we've got that. We're not to the NFL draft yet, and there's so much time for people to talk, for hot takes to fly. There's a full month and a half that we've got to go before the draft. And it's a month and a half where we really don't have any new information. Like, yeah, you're going to have pro days, but you don't have anything solid. I think right now is time to be patient. I think it's time to reflect and evaluate for yourself. We talk about that a lot. And I think it's time to quiet the noise that is around you. Listen, but don't buy in. Trust, but verify. Put your eyes on these players. Retain this information, but don't react recklessly to it. And I always go back to John Wooden, who coached UCLA basketball. He had over 850 wins as a coach, coached them to 10 championships in 12 years. And he used to say, be quick, but don't hurry. I think that applies to this period of time. And so it's going to be fun to dig into what we've seen for these running backs on film all the way before all this noise happened, because that's where we're at. We're still keeping that noise out, still looking at the film from college, what we see and how we see these players projecting to the NFL, even before we know landing spots, before we know draft capital. So I think that's where we're at.
The main thing that I think about, Zach, when you talk about us working to keep out the noise, I think so much about just the early 2000s R&B radio stations. Welcome into 101.1 The Buzz. This is the quiet storm. Just like that's what I have in my head. It's like, yes, like you've had this entire day of all the hustle and bustle and horns blaring and crunk tracks and everything else. And you get to the end of the night and it's the quiet storm that takes you home with some Brian McKnight, some Babyface, and some of those other lower key tracks. And that's I don't know. I don't know why I get that picture right now, but 100% as the noise continues to build around and more takes fly out and more information comes out, because all of a sudden with more information people feel emboldened to speak a little louder, and it may be the same thing that they've been saying, or they maybe have switched their tune a little bit, but the voices are louder. The echo chambers are more echoey. The dynamics in the room get just a little bit clearer in terms of bouncing off of walls and everything else. But this is definitely a time, as you said, trust but verify, and this is a clear place for us to be able to help fill that gap for a lot of folks. I'm excited. With that said, 6 running backs on the evening that we get to talk about today. You all already know, you've known for 4 years now who the RB1 of the class is. When we're looking at the 2023 running back class, yes, he wins the 2022 Doak Walker Award for best running back in the nation. Yes, 2022 consensus All-American. Yes, he was first in the Big 12 in yards as a freshman, rushing yards per attempt. Number 1 in the Big 12 in rushing yards this past season as a junior. Yes. Spoiler alert, 5'11", 215 pounds of one Bijan Robinson, the pride of Texas. And let me tell you that obviously the guy flat out gets it done on the ground, but what he's been able to do in terms of his own brand, forget the Dijon mustard, forget all the things that we see there with that. What he's been able to do with his brand on the field is be one of those really special players that does not come around every year, but really bolsters and buoys an entire class because of his greatness. In his final season at Texas, over 1,500 yards rushing, 18 touchdowns. Yes, shout out to his sophomore season where he was Zach Reed approved with the 26 catches for 295 yards and 4 scores. Then, listen, 33 total touchdowns in 3 seasons on the ground, 8 receiving touchdowns, and not to mention this past season, almost 1,900 scrimmage yards. Bijan is that guy. Zach, how much of the guy is Bijan?
The problem with using the term generational every other year to describe a running back is that it dilutes the word until it becomes meaningless. And besides, Bijan isn't generational. We've already seen Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook be prospects of this same caliber in just the last 6 years. The major prerequisite to becoming an elite back, though, comes not in the running game, but as a receiver. And Bijan Robinson is an exceptionally smooth pass catcher, adjusting to off-target throws with no trouble and transitioning from a receiver to a runner immediately. And as a runner, Bijan has very good patience and tremendous burst once he hits the hole. He can succeed between the tackles, but also has that speed to get to the outside. Although I think he's perpetually looking to run upfield, even when the play gets pushed outside. He wants to continue to get north and south, even if he's pressing the line of scrimmage. Robinson runs with really great pace, and it allows his ability to plant, cut, and change directions within the flow of the play really shine. I could gush about Bijan Robinson for hours, but I'll toss it back.
Listen, I could come in here and tell you everything that Zach has just said and that you've probably heard about Bijan all over the place. The guy is incredible. And I think one of his most endearing features that while Zach did highlight this, I want to make sure that people understand what you can do in the passing game as a running back at the next level, when we're talking about this game of fantasy football in the NFL, your ability to make the most of any and all opportunities that you are given is handsomely rewarded with more opportunity. Bijan Robinson, what he's able to do with his burst and really some of the easiest, quietest hands that you can remember since maybe somebody like Christian McCaffrey who was coming out, like just easy hands. Just it's a very smooth, seamless transition. It's something that your roster yearns for. And so his ability to now not just become someone that can add to an offense that's already really good, but can come in and be a central focus for how your offense is now a hub to move the ball and matriculate the ball down the field. Bijan has the opportunity with his big playability, with his burst, and what you highlighted, Zach, the contact balance through people. Some people run away from contact. Some people run to contact, and there are a very special few who run through contact. And I think that Bijan Robinson is one of those players that consistently runs through contact, not necessarily seeking it, but is able to take on tacklers from all angles at all times, at all levels, and finds himself falling forward and successful consistently. Bijan is tremendous. With that said, we know he's not perfect. He might be really close. He's someone that obviously a lot of folks like a lot. Zach, tell me a little bit about what you may not be so thrilled about when it comes to Bijan, if there is any.
There are a few things. There's nothing there's no such thing as a perfect prospect. There isn't. And Bijan has his share of flaws. As good as a pass catcher as Bijan Robinson is, he's not necessarily a natural route runner. So he's good in space, but I think if you're asking him to go split out wide and run wide receiver routes, you're going to be a little bit disappointed in what you have there. He's serviceable enough to make plays as a safety valve and on plays that are designed to get him in space, but I think he's often slow to present a target when he chips or when he has to run a route when his quarterback is in trouble. Robinson also gets hyper-focused on the initial hole sometimes, and he loses track of second-level defenders. And that's not all the time, but again, if we're picking nits on Bijan, that's one thing. And I think his drive to get upfield sometimes leaves Robinson dancing behind the line of scrimmage on plays that he should get to the outside and has a clear lane there, and he's still trying to find that hole to get him north and south. So LaDainian Tomlinson not walking through that door, but Bijan Robinson is, and Robinson will enter the league as one of 4 or 5 running backs that have the potential to lead the league in fantasy points year over year over year. His skill set is worth the hype, and for my money, worth the 101 in all formats.
Ooh, you must be in my notes right now, Zach. That was 100% the question I was going to be asking you. At this time, where would you be taking Bijan even in Superflex leagues? And obviously, you give us that nugget there. His vision, and you highlighted this well, Zach. That is the one area that I wished for more. And it's not that his vision's poor, and it's not even necessarily easy to explain always. But for me, there's a special ability that some running backs exhibit to be able to flash the vision through the second level, to be able to maximize and beat Eagles, not just with their athleticism, but being able to set those things up because they see the entire field. And I don't know that Bijan's there yet. Is it somewhere that he can get to? Probably. He's incredible, and we've seen him put on display just absurd things. Is that something that develops at the NFL level? I guess we'll see. But his sheer athleticism is going to allow for him, even when he has those times where you're like, I wish you would have seen that. Why couldn't you get out of there, beat the trash. And yeah, I think that's really, again, we're picking nits here. Bijan's fantastic. You're going to be happy if he's on your fantasy team. And again, at least for me, and Zach, I know that you can probably pull this, maybe not right now, but he is one of, if not the most highly graded film grade running backs for me in the last few years. And I find that I find it to be, I don't know, I'm really excited about what the prospects of his career can look like. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it's literally for me since 2017, Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, and then we're talking Bijan.
Yeah.
And Bijan and Dalvin Cook are graded out at like equally. And so again, the great thing about Bijan Robinson to me, yes, the pass catching, yes, all of the things that we've talked about, flowery language and all the things that we love. The really interesting thing is that 101 pick this year is worth more than a 101 pick in other years because of Bijan Robinson and because of the hype on Bijan Robinson and because people are putting Bijan Robinson all the way up to running back one already. And so even if you don't take Bijan, that 101 with Bijan in play becomes this huge trade chip. This is a 101 that you could conceivably in a super flex league add with something to go get Mahomes or go get Josh Allen, and that does not happen every year. That tells you how special Bijan Robinson is.
Incredibly well played. Well played. On to the next one. One of my personal favorite watches when it comes to running backs this year, we're heading down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama to check out Jahmyr Gibbs. Measures in at the combine, a little smaller than what obviously the folks at Alabama had him listed at. He measures in at 5'9", 199 pounds, puts up a fine speed in terms of his 40. And obviously he starts his collegiate career at Georgia Tech, where he gets put on the map. He's a fantastic player. He does awesome things week in and week out for the Yellow Jackets. He then has the opportunity to transfer for his junior season to Alabama, where he is the feature back and shares time with Jace McClellan, and Jahmyr in a fun offense led by Bryce Young does beautiful things. 926 yards on the ground, 7 touchdowns. Most importantly, each season increasing his his receptions year over year. 24 as a freshman, 35 in his second year at Georgia Tech, 44 in that final season at Alabama for 444 yards and 3 scores. Tremendous in space. Jahmyr Gibbs, go.
The shadow cast by Derrick Henry stretches across every subsequent Alabama running back. Henry is king. In 2020, Derrick Henry carried the ball 378 times as a Titan for 2,027 yards. That's the 5th greatest rushing season in the history of the NFL. And he finished 3rd in PPR scoring, 45 points behind Alvin Kamara. Enter Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs is the best pass catching back in the 2023 class, full stop. He can split out wide to run routes like a receiver. He can attack defenses out of the backfield on wheel routes, and he can do the normal running back catching the ball out of the backfield on screens and in the flats. And once he's got the ball in space, Gibbs creates yards after the catch with vision and quickness. Although Gibbs is just 5'9" and slightly sub 200 pounds, he runs between the tackles successfully with a combination of vision and patience. And I think he also has really good feet in traffic. He's able to get through a cluttered line of scrimmage unscathed, which is something really important to me, especially for a smaller back, if he's running between the tackles. Gibbs is very patient outside as well. I think he runs east-southeast. Like he starts out parallel to the line of scrimmage, utilizing his speed, and then he cuts upfield really suddenly. Gibbs can cut at nearly full speed, which helps to make him incredibly elusive. Really like this player.
He's probably among these guys, and I'm curious to get your take later, but for me, as I watch these guys, when you think about pure offensive weapon, like you talked about being put out in space, whatever that looks like in terms of out wide as a receiver, in the slot, doing a lot of fun things in that respect, running various routes, finding spaces all over the place to be leveraged. I think that he's the one that I'm most excited about in that regard. Jahmyr becomes a really intriguing piece when I think about all of the ways that he wins in space. The patience is beautiful. And what he's able to do when he does decide to turn on the jets, his burst is really tremendous. And I think for me, when I think about all the things that I really, really love to watch, it's his vision that I really wish that Bijan had, because I like what he does to be able to set things up at the second level and through the second level, especially when he's in space. Easy hands again. We talked about Bijan having incredibly easy hands. Jahmyr is the exact same place. Easy, quiet catching the ball. Crispy angle routes. Some of the crispiest. And it's really fun to watch too. And one of the things, while he's not someone who I would say exhibits much in the way of power or break tackle ability when it comes to the physical aspects of it, when he's able to get space and get his momentum going in space, that's when you see him be able to shed tacklers more often. And that obviously creates those big plays that we're able to see from him time and again. Angle breaker. I am all in on Jahmyr Gibbs. I just want to say that right now. With that said, and Zach, I want to get your thoughts on this, and maybe I'll come back to it thereafter. There was one thing that I think I see a little bit differently than you, because I do believe he does exhibit the ability to cut swiftly. There are just so many times, strangely, and I'm not always sure why, that he'll take several steps to be able to stop, to change direction. And maybe it's about just the flow of traffic and trying to maybe be able to let folks fly by. But that was one thing about his game that was strange, because he exhibits the stop foot, go foot in other instances easily. So tell me a little bit about some of the things that maybe didn't jive well with you.
Yeah, so I think even though Jahmyr Gibbs shines as a pass catcher, his pass blocking is a little bit suspect, especially early in his career at Georgia Tech. Gibbs tended to block standing straight up, foregoing all that leverage. And if you're a smaller guy, you've already got that advantage being able to get in underneath the defender and then get that leverage and lift that defender up. This did get significantly better at Alabama, and I'm gonna shout out running back coach Robert Gillespie again. He went from North Carolina. He's now at Alabama, and it shows that man is brilliant when it comes to running backs, and especially blocking running backs. And I think part of these struggles and Gibbs' woes at the goal line stems simply from him being small. Like, he's undersized. While he's fast enough to get to the edge, Gibbs sometimes gets caught hesitating behind the line of scrimmage, looking for that perfect hole. And I think that's what you're seeing, JMic, when he does that, like, stop and hesitate and like try to let things clean up in front of him. He's trying to look for perfection rather than just, use your speed and go get the outside and go. And so that's one thing that really kind of stuck out. There are going to be people, I think, that are hoping Jahmyr Gibbs becomes an elite bell cow option at the next level. He probably isn't going to be that. It was the same thing that people were hoping for years with DeAndre Swift. But I think that what he gives you is that Swift, Kamara, Antonio Gibson, Austin Eckler, that fantasy production is going to be buoyed enough by his pass catching that he's going to be awesome in PPR leagues. After all, a target is worth almost 3 times what a carry is, and that is Jahmyr Gibbs's forte.
Very well said. And your point about the trash is exactly what I have written down as well, Zach, at least for what I thought. There are times where even as good of a vision as he can show through the second level when it comes to the immediate pressure that he's receiving at the line of scrimmage, unfortunately, far too often there is the first tackler that is bringing him down. There's the trash that slows his momentum that just gets him, I think, discombobulated early in plays at times. And one thing that, and this is a small thing, so I think this is probably something that can probably get coached up. There are times where when he's running a route out of the backfield, instead of just kind of making the move on the defender and keeping the space that he has, sometimes he kind of drifts all the way up really close to the linebacker or the safety, whomever it is that's covering him, and they'll be able to put hands on him when he doesn't have to get so close to them when making that break at the stem of his route, which again, nitpicking. But it's one of those things that I saw several times on the film. I was like, why are you doing this? You have so much space. Keep the space that you have. Enough of Jahmyr Gibbs. Again, one of my absolute favorites, just to be able to watch in this class. We're moving on now to Texas A&M, College Station, Aggie time. Some call him Devon, some call him Devon. Last name is Achane. Bless you, gesundheit. If I had $1 for every time during a broadcast that the play-by-play announcer mentioned track speed, I would be quite wealthy at this point, Zach. I'm telling you right now, for all the games that we've watched, everyone and their mother loves to bring up the fact he's not just a track guy. It's not just track speed. And we know it's not. We get it. He's really, really good. Achane was one who gave us over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground here in his final season at Texas A&M. And some might wonder, hey, was he actually the better option when he was sharing time and somewhat playing behind Isaiah Spiller back when they both shared time with the Aggies? I'm not here to argue it. I'm just simply posing the questions that I hear out in the world now, Zach. The last couple of seasons, we see over 20 catches in his sophomore and junior campaigns at Texas A&M. Devon Achane, blazer, and a much tougher runner than you give someone credit for, being 5'8", 188 pounds. Devon Achane, what do you have for us, Zach?
Yeah, you caught me. The term track speed gets thrown around a ton in football circles, especially around the combine, when it inevitably comes up in conversations about Devon Achane. However, it's not going to be misused in this case. On top of his 196 carry, 1,100 yard season in 2020, Achane also put up the third fastest time in Texas A&M history in the indoor 60 meters, 6.63 seconds, if you're curious. There's no way around Achane's size, though. He's 5'9" or 5'8", 188 pounds, and that's going to be a problem. In spite of that, Achane was actually effective as an inside runner over the last 2 years in the SEC. He's a crease runner, getting compact at the point of attack, and then accelerating through the hole and into the second level. Achane, I think, has very good hands, posting 24 and 36 catches over the past 2 seasons, and he is a talented route runner as well. And even though he is undersized, Achane's blocking technique allows him to effectively use leverage to hold off defenders from getting the quarterback, and he's also really good at picking up the blitz, and so identifying and getting there. So you like that, especially from a guy who looks like he's probably going to begin as a 1B, satellite back in a committee.
And being that part-time player obviously is never really exciting for us in the fantasy space, but what he's actually able to do with the opportunities that he's going to get versus what so many of the folks who he's coming in with, you have to be excited for what could be for Devon Achane regarding where he lands, what he'll be able to do, and how they'll launch him into the specific offense. One of my favorite things about Devon Achane is his first level vision. right at the line of scrimmage, he is leveraging some incredibly quick feet to be able to pick through um, gaps, creases, as you mentioned previously, Zach, and really make the most at getting downhill. I don't know of many guys who are as diminutive as Achane is that are primary downhill runners. And that is something that he exhibits incredibly well. The contact balance that he's able to, and again, we're talking about a 5'8", 188-pound guy running through people, which is doesn't make sense, right? And he doesn't run to contact. He's just able to bounce off of and shrug off folks left and right. I think that just speaks to the power that he has in his lower half, which is really fun to see as well. I really enjoy his speed to power, and that downhill ability is, I think, something that really is ingrained in a running back. I don't necessarily know that that's something that's taught. That's something that people really have a passion to do, and he does it consistently. And obviously with the speed, it's taillights in many instances. With that said, Achane, again, we've talked plenty about his size. What else gives you pause, Zach?
Yeah, unfortunately, force is equal to mass times velocity. And while velocity is not a problem, that's easy for A-Chain. Physics is working against him when he's trying to run with power in short yardage situations where the defense knows that he's going to get the ball and try to gain a few yards. A-Chain is also not quite decisive enough to consistently get out to the edge where his long speed can do real damage. Like, I think this is a kind of a recurring theme where some of these players who have the speed to get to the edge, either they've been told don't bounce, don't bounce, don't bounce, or they just don't quite see that. They have the speed to get there. A-Chain has the speed to get there and has the speed to do some, incredible things on the outside. And even though A-Chain is a smaller, shifty back, I think he gets caught too often by the initial defender, especially when there's quick penetration. He doesn't have quite that, like, I'm going to get out of the way and go. He's real good through the whole second level. But if an initial defender gets in there, there's some issues. I think the path is paved for undersized backs who are best suited between the tackles, even though it's a narrow path and probably uphill. A-Chain profiles initially, I think, as a pass catcher in a committee, but, and we talk about this all the time when we see smaller backs who run inside, if you look at what Devin Singletary did, and I know Singletary's 12 pounds heavier, but it's a similar running style, a small player who can run inside, can run and absorb contact. That's what the potential for fantasy looks like with A-Chain. And the successful space backs all have one thing in common, and that's that speed. And A-Chain absolutely has that.
Fascinating to see where he goes next season. I mean, it's going to be awesome. Man, very good stuff. 3 guys down, 3 to go. We now get to some folks' favorite running back in this class. Obviously, not so much to the level of Bijan, but in terms of people that you're really excited to watch in this group, Zach Charbonnet, formerly from Michigan, most recently from UCLA. He was absolutely fantastic, obviously, as a freshman at Michigan. And even to set the stage even better, when we think about the combine, and it's strange because he measures in at 6 feet, 214 pounds. But even since he was a freshman in college, the man runs like he is made of granite. Just someone who is incredibly tough. 726 yards rushing in his freshman season at Michigan. He has the COVID shortened season in 2020, and then transfers to UCLA where he obviously gets with Chip Kelly and does awesome things. 1,100 yards in his junior campaign, and in this final senior year, 1,359 yards. The man in 2 years at UCLA had 27 rushing touchdowns, which is just absurd. 24 catches as a junior, 37 catches as a senior. While he doesn't get in the paint, flashing those hands is awfully nice to see. Zach Charbonnet, Lots of fantastic thoughts of grandeur when he was at Michigan. He goes to UCLA, revives his name a little bit. People are very excited about Charbonnet. Zach, are you people?
I'm people. I'm people. He's my running back 3. I like him. But I think they're closer to discovering the money pit on Oak Island than we are to uncovering the mysterious truth about what happened to Zach Charbonnet's departure from Michigan. After leading that backfield as a freshman, Charbonnet got just 19 carries in his second season and immediately departed for sunny UCLA. Charbonnet feels like he's set for a slow ascension, culminating with the NFL draft in April, and you've already started to see this happen. He's one of the few backs in the 2023 class with the size and skill set to carry a 3-down workload. Charbonnet has tremendous vision between the tackles. He gets compact through the hole, and he runs with an impressive combination of power and speed. He felt bigger than that 214 pounds. You said he feels like he's carved out of granite. He's chiseled. He does. He feels like he's just a big bell cow type back. He accelerates, though, deceptively quickly, both to begin a play and also once that gap opens up. And Charbonnet rarely gets squared up by a defender. Because of this, he's able to use his contact balance and leg drive to add extra yardage at the end of runs. While I think Charbonnet is a better than average pass catcher, it's unlikely that he's going to be asked to run an intricate route tree at the next level. You're not looking at a guy who's going to catch 50 or 60 balls, but I think you could see him add 30 or 40 without any issue.
While he doesn't, I think, run to seek contact, again, a guy who is running through and making people look like they didn't even really try to tackle him, he's impressive on a lot of levels. And like you said, Zach, him being one of very few in this class that profile per se as this 3-down type of player, and not that he's an offensive weapon in the passing game, but you don't necessarily have to take him off of the field to be able to get things done either. I really enjoy his patience that he plays with. I never feel like he's out over his skis, even when he's trying really hard to really, when he starts to open it up. While I don't love his ability to try to turn the boat sometimes when he's trying to actually get those feet under him to cut, I don't feel like he ever runs in a space where he's out of control or just feeling like it's not happening for him. He's under control. His feet are staying under him. He's able to run through tacklers. And the patience that he's able to exhibit in many instances allow him, even as a bigger player, allow him to be able to maximize what he's already maximizing with his actual size and leg drive. Charbonnet's intriguing. I'm a little bit scared for some of the downside with Charbonnet, but you could really see, and there are plenty of examples in these last few years of players who play like Charbonnet who have been incredibly fantasy viable time and again. Zach, what are some of the things about Charbonnet that give you pause?
I think Zach Charbonnet needs to run downhill. His
Yes.
ability east-west is lacking pretty severely. He tends to get strung out to the sideline when he's asked to run outside the tackles and just doesn't have the speed to get the edge. Charbonnet's fast for a bigger back, but he does not possess enough juice to break long runs consistently. So he's going to be like a chunk runner, not a game breaker or a threat to score anytime he touches it. While patience may be a virtue, being overly patient, I think, costs Charbonnet some yardage when he allows too much time to pass before attacking upfield. When you're looking to add running backs this year in your rookie drafts, I think it's easy to get caught up in athleticism or looking for an elite trait to give you that extra potential. But I think what you should be looking for is pass catching prowess with the possibility of shouldering a 3-down workload. And that's exactly what Zach Charbonnet has to offer. A side note, he was my most fun evaluation, not for what he did on the field, But because I'd evaluated him last year before he decided to go back to school, and watching those same games again this year, almost every single note plus minus that I had was the same as what I had from last year. I went back and looked, and so it was fun for me to have a little bit of checks and balances for my evaluation, and also fun to see that I wasn't, running it out to the nth degree with Charbonnet, that I was still grounded with what I was seeing. So that's always fun.
Charbonnet is who we thought he was, and we let him off the hook. Shout out to Denny Green, God rest his soul. I always think of that meme of his and that video clip, but that's exactly it. He is exactly who you thought he was, Zach. That's exactly how it played out. I get really nervous when he's East-West because it doesn't usually end well, and that is one of those things where, okay, maybe we're not looking at him being part of a scheme that is zone scheme, because I'm not sure how quickly he's going to be able to continue to turn that speed to power over and make it something that makes sense for him in terms of getting up the field. Not to say that he can't do it, but in my mind, as I just forecast out, what is that going to look like in terms of people being excited about trying to draft him? Is he going to be a part of something that fits what people want to do? Is that going to limit his landing spots? And I think the same for Achane, but to a different degree, how they translate to tackle breakers at the second level or at the next level is going to be an interesting thing to see, because what Achane doesn't have, obviously, is that mass that really allows him to do that. The things that we saw at A&M, I don't know that they all translate, him shrugging people off left to right in some of the SEC, but still, it's not the NFL. I'm curious to see if Charbonnet is going to be someone who's going to be able to consistently be that guy at this level too. And with that, we've got two left. We move on to Oxford, Mississippi, where we look at their second best running back in that backfield currently. Yes, that is a big ups to Quinshon Judkins, because I saw that guy live. He's for real. We're talking about Zach Evans this evening. Zach Evans coming in at 5'11", 202. Threw me off a little bit. Wasn't expecting the 202, but it's nice to see. Started his collegiate career at TCU. He gives us one full year at Ole Miss. He goes 144 attempts, 936 yards for 9 touchdowns in that Lane Kiffin offense that really showed some positive things this past season. He shared time with Quinshon Judkins, and really by the time we got to the end of the year, Quinshon Judkins became like the guy for that backfield. And again, in 2 seasons, I'm really excited to see Quinshon Judkins come out. But as we talk about Zach Evans, someone who is highly regarded coming out of high school, went to TCU, ended up leaving TCU, and really, I think for a lot of folks became somewhat of an enigma as to exactly where is his place in this class as a name that was really highly regarded. Where do you see Zach Evans at this point? Zach Reed.
So I think there's a lot of cognitive dissonance in Zach Evans' profile. He was the 5-star recruit, was the second-ranked running back in the class coming out of high school, headed to TCU. He ran for nearly 7 yards a carry over his first 3 collegiate seasons. He took over the bulk of the TCU backfield work early in his sophomore year. Evans also transferred to Ole Miss for the 2022 season, where he was summarily outplayed by Quinshon Judkins, the freshman, while his former backfield mate over at TCU, Kendre Miller, rolled up almost 1,400 yards. Throw in a did not participate at the combine after weighing in at 202 pounds, and it's really hard to know what to think about Zach Evans. For his part, though, I think Evans is a very good runner on the inside and off tackle. He gets up to speed very quickly, making Evans a threat to rip off huge chunks of yardage on any play he touches the ball. Although he doesn't really make defenders miss, he is exceptional at gaining angles that allow Evans to run away from them. And he rarely gets squared up by a tackler either. And because of this, I think Evans is able to drive his legs and take defenders for a little extra ride at the end of runs. This seems kind of counterintuitive since Evans isn't a prototypically sized back, but he is even great at the goal line. He finds ways to get low and leverage that into the paint.
Cognitive dissonance is right. It's 100% right. Zach Evans becomes a player that you could very much see taking in your rookie drafts and being able to increase his value so swiftly. And what I like a lot about what he's able to do, specifically when he's running east west, I like it, and it's not quite the DeAndre Swift dead leg, but he's got a nice little dead leg move that allows him to be able to get space. And his isn't necessarily just to be able to do it to cut back to the inside. He's also got one that has he's going outside. He leverages it to the inside and runs back outside. And it's really cool to be able to see, like you said, Zach, him set up those angles to win consistently. And that angle, that ability to beat angles is something that we look at every position, every season, and we recognize that that is something that 100% translates to success with our fantasy players, because when they get that opportunity in space, that's something that Zach Evans was able to consistently do. I like what he's able to do for, again, a frame that's probably not typically walking around at 202. I like what he's able to do in terms of when he runs and wants to get downhill. While he does get squared up, he does run angry enough to be able to deliver a blow. Again, sometimes he's seeking contact, which I don't love to see, but I do enjoy what he's able to do in terms of leveraging his speed, getting people off balance. And I think that's something that people can really be excited about for Zach Evans. But what are you not so excited about when it comes to Zach Evans?
So I think to me, the most obvious flaw to Zach Evans' game is how often he struggles to get to the outside and turn that corner upfield. And when this happens, instead of pressing the line of scrimmage to get north and south, he allows himself to get strung out to the sideline and then rendered ineffective. He also is susceptible to defenders attacking him low on his frame, and he goes down easily when things aren't clean around him. And so, like you talk about all that contact balance and his ability to not be hit square when guys are hitting his legs, he is down like a sack of bricks. Evans tends to get careless with the ball as well, carrying it out in one arm, sacrificing ball security for a little extra speed, even at the point of contact. And I don't think Evans is an asset in the passing game, although he could be successful if he was given some space to work with. Like, that's one of those things where if I don't see it, it's hard for me to project it. So for all intents and purposes of this evaluation, it's not there. Zach Evans can run with speed. He runs with contact balance and even some power, but I think his lack of vision to the outside, that little bit of fumbling issue, and his mediocrity as a pass catcher tip the scales on the other side. Evans is a good running back, but I think ultimately he probably profiles as a player who's going to be far more valuable to his NFL team than to your fantasy squad. And I know I dropped this in the DM. So much of this Zach Evans profile feels like a carbon copy of what I wrote about Ronald Jones. And not that they're the same player, but it's the guy that you want to get in space, but you can't figure out how to get him there.
Yeah, and that specifically when people are going low on you and you don't have an answer, that's the part that really bothers me about Zach Evans. If you're going to be one who is going to make your hay per se, with trying to consistently what's the word? Trying to consistently outrun folks wherever you go. It can't be a case where the first guy that's getting you low is being the one that brings you down. And that's one of the things that really make me nervous about his prospects going forward in terms of his ability to run with power in that sense. I like what he's able to do when he does actually get downhill, but sometimes when in the process of getting there, it's not consistently great to be able to actually be productive. I'm excited to see how the NFL is going to value him, because he could be someone that just gets washed away into the fourth, day 3, 4th, 5th round, and people are losing interest in quickly. And I think that could be a thing, but we'll see how it all shakes out. Last player on the evening, we've got one Orangeman, um, Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker came at the combine 5'9", 207 pounds. And when you look at Sean Tucker, I believe he's also one of the guys that people have been pretty excited about for the last couple of years. Not to say that he's a world beater, and not to say that he's someone that is going to be pushing folks out of a job immediately, but for the work that he was able to do, specifically on the volume that he had at Syracuse, tremendous. He totaled over 450 carries in his final 2 seasons at Syracuse. That's good enough for over 2,500 yards rushing, over 23 touchdowns in those 2 seasons. And yes, Zach Reed rule approved, 20 catches as a sophomore, or excuse me, in that 2021 season, and then 36 catches in that 2022 season. We saw Syracuse have a little bit of success. We saw Sean Tucker do a lot of really positive things for a backfield that was really lacking aside from him. He led the ACC in rushing in that 2021 season. And Sean Tucker is someone who quietly, a lot of folks are thrilled to be able to see finally make his way to the NFL. Zach, final player on the evening, Sean Tucker's all yours.
Sean Tucker didn't run the 40-yard dash at the combine, and it's too bad. Not because NFL scouts or us fantasy jockeys need to see him run it to improve his draft stock or improve his rookie standings, but because it would have been fun. Tucker held the Maryland State High School record for the 55-meter dash for 2 years straight, and was the state champion in both the 100 and 200-meter events. Speed is not a problem for Sean Tucker. His background as a sprinter speaks toward Tucker's burst and acceleration through an open hole, but he has long speed as well. On top of being fast in a straight line, I think Tucker is also great at making sharp cuts at the second level, and this gives him the ability to turn a solid gain into a huge play anytime he touches it. Tucker's acumen as a pass catcher, he has the ability to split out wide and run routes, as well as making plays on screen. This makes him a dynamic PPR option. All things you love to see: game-breaking speed, pass catching.
Zach, let me ask you this. When you think about Sean Tucker, and let's not even talk about this yet for fantasy and for whatever team he ends up landing on. I think the first thing that I want to go back to is when you talk through him being able to just be outstanding in terms of obviously just the straight line speed and game breaking ability in many ways. Why do you think, and I'm asking you to dream a little bit for a second, why do you think that his efficiency in terms of rushing wasn't more? Do you think a lot of it had to do with just Syracuse's O-line not being fantastic in terms of what you were able to see? Or was it a matter of there were just so many yards that he would be leaving on the field so often?
So I think, so you see him at the second level, you see him rolling off those chunk runs. For a back that excels in space like that and at the second level, he fails spectacularly when he's forced to be creative behind the line of scrimmage. And so, yes, some of that's on the offensive line, but more of that is on Sean Tucker. And we've seen running backs come out of college. Saquon, you saw Breece Hall, you saw even David Montgomery was able to create behind a bad offensive line because they had that ability to, understand where the defender was coming from, set a defender up, and then make a move and add yardage. And Tucker doesn't do that. If the design hole isn't blocked immaculately, or if Tucker finds himself in traffic, he slows down and it negates his biggest weapon. His speed is obviously that trump card. And if he's not using that, if he's slowing down, he's in a lot of trouble. I also think Tucker's balance is suspect. Like, I don't think he's got great contact balance. He wants to get out and use his speed so much that he'll actually run out from under his feet sometimes. And that makes it far easier for players to take him down. Even though Tucker's an excellent pass catcher, his blocking technique is like throw a shoulder in the general direction of a defender and like hope that slows him down, and it really doesn't. So I know I answered more than your question, but that's what I'm seeing. I think Tucker profiles more as a pass catcher plus than he does as a true feature back, which is weird to say about a guy who had a 1,500-yard season and has been a 200-plus carry back the last 2 years. But his lower film grade for me, I think, is misleading because the things that he does really well are things that are valuable for fantasy: home run plays and pass catching. Landing spot, draft capital are going to play a huge part in where Tucker goes in fantasy drafts. But I think he very well could end up being a huge return on a 2023 second round pick.
Very well said. Well said. I'm going to leave it there on Tucker because I'm tepid just because I get really frustrated when I watch, unfortunately, and the creativity is lacking when structure is out the window. And I just feel like the really some of the most productive running backs that we see year in and year out in this game of fantasy are these guys who are just, for lack of a better term, creative geniuses when it comes to their ability to improvise and string moves together to maximize what is blocked, and in many cases, what's not blocked, and putting that all together.
Yeah, it feels like the Rudyard Kipling, he who can keep his head while all those about him are losing theirs is a man. Like that's the back who, you know, is able to see all of the traffic coming at him, slow that down, make a move to get out of it and go. And that's not what Sean Tucker does. It's not who he is. If there is yardage in front of him, if there's space in front of him, he's gone and he can do a lot with it. But you got to get him there because he's not getting himself there on his own.
Yeah. Very good. All right, Zach. That's all 6 down for this first week of the Rookie Hootenanny RBs Part 1 in traditional Hootenanny fashion. Obviously, we want to be able to talk through where do these guys land when we look at these first 6 players. Obviously, we can assume Bijan Robinson's at the top. Curious to see if you have him in his own stratosphere or if you have anyone else joining him. But yeah, how do your tiers and how do your film grades at this point? And again, everyone, these are film grades that we're talking about right now. Lots to be determined, still many data points to be picked through. Still lots of Peter Howard musings that we've got to also be able to grind through. But I'm excited for the process. But again, we're talking film grades at this point. Zach, what's it look like?
So I get Bijan Robinson at 1 in a tier by himself with like 2 spaces in that tier. He is elite. He is the back you want. Jahmyr Gibbs is my running back 2 in the class in a tier by himself. I think he's separated enough from the rest of the class to warrant that. 3 is Zach Charbonnet. And again, he's in a tier with another player that we'll talk about later. Roschon Johnson, if you're wondering, which may be a little hot takey, but it won't be by the time we get there. I think he's a good player. But Charbonnet with that 3-down skill set is 3. Devon Achane is 4 out of this group, 6 overall. Zach Evans is 5 out of this group, 9 overall for me. And then Sean Tucker is a tier below him at 10. And again, not that I dislike Sean Tucker, but I don't think he's a 3-down back in the NFL. I think he's more of a pass catcher. I think he's more of a space back. And then in the event of an emergency break glass, you could have him be, a pass catcher plus.
Yeah. And he's an interesting one that if you get him behind a dominant offensive line, let's say they sneak him in Philadelphia, that could be quite juicy.
Yeah.
From a production standpoint. My rankings, unfortunately, I wish I had more pizzazz to give you all. It again, it's Bijan in that first tier, and unfortunately, because he's not my favorite player in the class, but obviously he's the best. But I've got him in his own tier. Jahmyr Gibbs is my favorite. He's my favorite player to watch. And again, there are things that I wish so much for him, and I would like him even more. Alas, he's still outstanding. He's my number 2 back out of this group. I've still got Devon Achane. I really like what he was able to put together time over time, and just me being really shocked at his play style and how he was able to consistently get downhill. I just like what he's able to do there. He's my 3. I've got Zach Charbonnet at 4. And I've actually got them film grade wise. They came out really close for me, even though, again, they're not, obviously you look at them, they're not nearly the same when you look at them. We've got Zach Evans at 5 and then Sean Tucker at 6. And how they fill in, I'm going to hold on that, because I think that second group of 6, it'll be fun to be able to see how these guys fit into the rest of this group. Zach, final words on the evening as we cut out of here.
Yeah, I think looking at this class and talking through the running backs, you keep hearing this class talked about as being underwhelming. You keep hearing that it didn't deliver. We just talked about Jahmyr Gibbs, who you and I both agree that we absolutely love as a player, love his skill set, love it for fantasy. We had Jake Anderson in the chat saying the exact same thing. He's his favorite player to watch. The skill set is awesome. You're going to be able to get Jahmyr Gibbs in Superflex drafts occasionally at 105, maybe 106, maybe as far back as 107. And that, to me, is just an illustration of how deep this class is at the top for fantasy, and the other players that we talked about today and some players we're going to talk about next week, how really good, how really effective they can be for fantasy, how they can slot in as either a 3-down back or a productive piece of a committee. There are so many running backs in this class, and we haven't even gotten to tight ends. We haven't gotten to quarterbacks. Like, this class is just as deep as everyone said it was. You're just not hearing what they're saying. You're hearing there are going to be 10 Bijan Robinsons. There's no such thing as a class with 10 Bijan Robinsons, but this class is tremendous. The depth, the height at the top, and then the depth beneath it. It's second round picks aren't first round picks. Like that never happens. And I know I said this in the primer, but that's what people are hearing. They hear, oh, this is a great class. Oh, second round picks are going to be worth first round picks. No, but half of your first round picks are going to be worth first round picks, which is amazing. The back end of your first round picks are going to be worth second round picks, which I know that sounds counterintuitive, but that's actually good, because most first rounds don't have that value. And most of your second round is going to be worth second round picks, which almost never happens. Like, it is a deep class. It is a good class. It is a fun class to watch, because there's so much to differentiate these guys. There's so many different skill sets. And I know it's a little undersized. You've seen a lot of guys hover around 200. They're all pass catchers. How many guys did you talk about tonight that had at least 120 catch, mostly 220 catch seasons? We love it. This is a PPR world, man. We're living in it. So
It's a beautiful thing. I'm excited. I know I get on here and I say that weekly, but I am thrilled. Always a pleasure to be here with you, Zach. Again, all the best to our dear brother Matt Foreman, who's out this week, and we'll be back to regularly scheduled programming next week when we cover the second set of 6 running backs for Hootenanny Running Backs Part 2. Zach, floor is yours.
all right. I appreciate everybody who jumped in the chat and rolled with us. It's always fun to have people here, have people watching. I feel like we're a little bit like Mike Mulligan and Marianne the Steam Shovel, where the more people who come, we work a little bit faster and a little bit better. We appreciate everybody listening on the podcast end of things. I am at Tacit Assassin 13 on Twitter. JMic is at JMic Check. Matt Foreman is at Fat Mormon. The Dynasty Dummies is at Dynasty Dummies. We appreciate you rolling with us. We appreciate you listening, coming, showing up again next week. We're going to do the second 6 running backs. Then we're going to do a quarterback tight end show. And then we're into the class participation portion where you let us know who we missed, who you want to hear about, who you want us to put eyes on. We may do 2 shows with that. If there are enough wide receivers and enough running backs, we may roll 2 shows. We'll see. But we appreciate you being here. Appreciate you listening. This has been the Dynasty Dummies. Peace. I got to find that button. It's over here. Click.